الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومطاعنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا أخرجنا نعمل صالحا غير الذي كنا نعمل أولم نعمركم ما يتذكر فيه من تذكر وجاءكم النذير فذوقوا فما للظالمين من نصير. صدق الله العظيم. Honorable ulama, respected brothers, beloved youth, as our esteemed MC has mentioned, the favors of Allah Ta'ala upon us are innumerable and they are infinite and uncountable. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. But from the many bounties of Allah Ta'ala, there are two bounties which have received specific attention and exclusive mention from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is found in a prophetic saying, in a hadith, when the Master Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions, Ni'matan, there are two bounties. مَغْبُونٌ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ مِّنَ النَّاسِ. The majority of people are in deception with regards to these two bounties. Now majority meaning young, old, black, white, learned, not so learned, every Muslim, every non-Muslim, every human. The Nabi of Allah is saying, when it comes to these two bounties, then they are negligent. Indirectly the Nabi of Allah is saying, that in regards to these two bounties, don't be from the majority, be from the minority. Because the majority are in deception with regards to these two bounties. Now what are the two bounties? The first, as-sihha, good health, physical strength, ability, mobility, agility. And the second, al-faragh, time, opportunity. If we look at these two bounties, these are two bounties of Allah Ta'ala which are generally taken for granted. If a person is well, physically able, he can walk, he can move, he's independent, he can do things for himself, he can see to his own needs, then that person takes it for granted that that will continue indefinitely. In the back of our minds we know that the system of Allah is such, Allahu alladhi khalaqakum min da'af. Allah created you weak. When you were a young baby, someone had to do everything for you. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِن بَعْدِ ضَعْفٍ قُوَّةٍ. Then Allah gave you strength. You were in the prime of your life. You were in your youth. You could run, you could move. You were mobile. You could do for yourself. You had strength, you had energy, you had vigor. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ مِن بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ ضَعْفًا وَشَيْبًا. But then life comes full cycle. As your hair starts to grey, as the years start to pass on, the bones become weaker, the structure starts to become lax, and ultimately you become once again like a baby. You may be now a grandfather rather than a grandson, but somebody needs to feed you, somebody needs to clothe you, somebody needs to take you to the bathroom. So that's how life starts, and that's how life ends. But we find ourselves in that in-between period, and we think, well, I'm still far away from those twilight years when I'll be bedridden, Allah protect us, or when I'll be too weak to move. So we think that things will go on. But one motor car accident and a person is then rendered a paraplegic, even though he may still be a teenager, even though he may be in the prime of his life. When it comes to incidents of this nature, they don't discriminate based on age. It's not only the old people who suffer an accident or who are afflicted by cancer or have some disease or the other that they come down with. A simple example. Sometimes a person playing some football or doing some chore, he slips and he breaks his hand. In today's time of technology, that's not something major. They put your hand in the cast, and for a few weeks you have to keep the cast on, and after that your hand is repaired and it comes back to normal. But ask the person whose hand was broken, that for that 6 weeks how difficult life became. Putting on your clothes, something that we take for granted, now became something very difficult. You need somebody's assistance. Going to the bathroom, taking a shower, making wudu, performing your salah, driving a motor car, all of the normal things in our day-to-day lives have all of a sudden become very difficult when just one limb in the body has been compromised. I once met a brother who met up in a car accident and his eyes were affected and he lost the usage of his eyelids. He lost the usage of his eyelids, an insignificant component of the human body. And he says, every hour I have to rinse out my eyes. Every hour I have to rinse out my eyes because of the function of the eyelid is to keep out the dust, to keep out all the material that's not supposed to go into the eye. And when you lose the function of your eyelid, one insignificant component of the human body, life has become so difficult that every hour I have to rinse out my eyes if I want to preserve my sight. Hence Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, as-siha, when you got health, when you got ability, don't think that it will continue indefinitely. Allah can snatch it at any time. Allah can take it at any time. And if Allah doesn't take it, then old age will come to you before you realize it. And the elder amongst us, they will testify how many times in the month of Ramadan you'll hear the ulama say, a man will come and he'll cry and he'll say, Moulana, I want to fast, but the doctor is telling me not to fast. My whole life I have fasted and now I can't fast. But that's the reality of life. That's what happens to the body. How many times a person who's elderly, he has the wealth, he has the visa, but he can't perform Hajj because his body cannot withstand the rigors. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is saying, there's no guarantee in life. There's no guarantee in life. One day, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu, that young boy, what is the state of your iman? What is the state of your iman? He said, Ya Rasulullah, with all humility, I think my iman is of a sound nature. I think my iman is of a good quality. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Mu'adh, fine. But what's the evidence for that? Why do you say your iman is of a good quality? And Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu responded and said, Ya Rasulullah, when I wake up in the morning, I don't expect to see the evening. Not even that, when I take one step forward, I don't expect that I will be granted an opportunity to take the next step. Such is my approach to life. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is encouraging us that don't let even 1 second in your life go for granted. Islam does not say you have to spend every second of your life in the masjid or on the musalla or reading Quran. But Islam says whether you're in the masjid or you're at home, whether you are in school or in your sports field, you must be doing something constructive. You must be doing something beneficial, either to your dunya or to your akhirat. Because every life that passes, every second that passes is a second that has passed away. We are walking corpses. Allah has preordained and predetermined that we would live for so many years, so many weeks, so many months, so many days, so many hours, so many seconds. And every second that passes is a second that has passed away in our lives. A second that will never return. Good health, normally they say, time is money. But in reality, time is more valuable than money. That's the second quality that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam talks about, al-faragh. And good health and time is such that they are interlinked. If a person is sick, automatically his time becomes compromised. How much of your time you have to now spend in the doctor's surgery? How much of your time you need to run from pharmacy to pharmacy looking for your medication? How much of your time would be spent searching for a specialist who can give you the answers? How much of your time will be spent administering the medication, taking out time to be able to see to your health? And money is also attached to good health. How much of your money will be spent in trying to remedy and in trying to find a cure for your ailments? So Allah Ta'ala is telling us that this health that I've given you, this ability that I've given you, don't take it for granted. Don't think it will last indefinitely. Because when it is afflicted, that not only will your ability be afflicted, your time will also be afflicted, and your wealth will also be afflicted. So wise to have this ability and wise to have this strength, utilize it in various ways to earn the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala and to secure the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. And today one of the greatest tragedies is that we don't value time. Youngsters don't value time. The time that Allah has given you to study, to secure an education, to learn Quran, to learn about the deen. Middle-aged people don't value time. We spend hours on end sitting in front of the television. We spend hours on end playing futile games on the computer. We spend hours on end chatting about things which are totally irrelevant and making, guna by gossiping and by slandering. We don't realize that this is something for which not only will we be held accountable, but it is irreplaceable. That second, that hour, that day, that week, that month that goes is never going to return. And the secret of it all is, if you value your time, Allah will grant you barakah in your time. If you study the lives of the pious, sometimes you are amazed. Moulana Sulaiman Ravat, in one lifetime he wrote over 1,000 books. And you ask yourself, that modern day scholars, after they write a book and they publish a book, even in the Western world, the philosophers, the so-called thinkers, they'll say, I did research for 5 years. For 5 years I left everything aside. Even those who write novels, they can only produce a novel once a year. That's at best. Sometimes once every 2 years, once every 3 years. Even Harry Potter, not that I condone it or I sanction it, but you're all aware of it. How many volumes could the author come up with, and then she had to close the series? And it took a period of almost 15 years to come up with a few volumes. Yet if you study the lives of the pious, they did so much. They wrote, Moulana Sulaiman not only wrote 1,000 books, how many lectures he delivered, he ran a khanka, he was in the Shura of Darul Ulum Deoband. And you ask yourself, how can a man achieve all of this in one lifetime? And the answer is that there is no logical explanation. It's because Allah Ta'ala has granted barakah in time. And Allah will only grant you barakah in your time if you appreciate your time. And if you don't appreciate your time, if you waste your time, if the ustad comes a little late to class, instead of saying, okay, let me learn one extra ayah, let me go over my previous day's work, you waste that time and you do something futile, something irrelevant, something unnecessary. Then when the ustad does come in the class, it will take you double the time to learn what you would have learned had you shown appreciation for the opportunity which Allah Ta'ala has given you. That's why these two boundaries, the physical ability which Allah has given you, and this time and opportunity which Allah has given you. Opportunity is such a thing that the ulama writes, you must treat it as a guest. How do you treat a guest? If you treat a guest well, the guest will always return. At this person's house, you get good chow, hospitality, they treat you well, they're friendly, they meet you with a smile, so he feels like coming back. Similarly, when you have an opportunity to do something good, if you treat it like a guest, meaning you treat it well and you practice upon it and you latch on the opportunity and you take maximum benefit, then that opportunity will revisit and it'll revisit and there'll be more barakah in your life. But if you don't treat it well, meaning you don't practice upon it and you don't maximize upon it, then it will not return. This is the system of Allah Ta'ala. I'll mention 2 or 3 incidents with regards to time and how to appreciate time, and we'll conclude. It is mentioned, for example, Ibn Hajar was a very famous scholar. He wrote the most famous commentary on Bukhari Sharif. The most famous commentary on Bukhari Sharif. And just that commentary, he wrote many other books, but just that commentary, the scholars say you can't understand how he completed it in one lifetime. But he used to value time so much. In those days, they didn't have pens like we have today. You had an ink pot, and you had to take that stick and dip it into the ink pot and write, and then dip it in again, and then the stick after every few lines would become blunt, and it would require sharpening. Then you need to sharpen the stick, then dip it in the ink pot, and then write again. So they say that Ibn Hajar was so conscious of time, that when he was sharpening his pen, even those moments while sharpening the pen, he said, these moments can't go to waste. I can recite the 3rd kalima once, Subhanallah, walhamdulillahi, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. And the ulama say, every time he sharpened his pen, he made this dhikr, and because of that, Allah granted him so much barakah in his time, and so much barakah in his effort, that till today, any ustad who teaches the Bukhari Sharif will read the commentary of Ibn Hajar and he'll get the reward of it. So he lived for a few years only. He lived one lifetime. We're all only going to live one lifetime. But he appreciated the opportunity which Allah gave him, and he valued the time. And when he did that, Allah Ta'ala blessed him in his efforts. The great Mufti of Pakistan, Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah, used to say, every morning when I wake up, mentally I have got my whole itinerary prepared. Today we don't know. Okay, I'll see what happens. I might do this, I might do that. Even on a weekend, even during a holiday, you're doing things differently, but you still have to do things constructively. There must be no wastage of time. Even when you're relaxing, You must do so in a constructive manner. I'm going to relax from this time to this time. After that, I need to get back to my work. I only got one life. I only got one opportunity. I only got one bite at the cherry. So Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi says, I have a schedule in place in terms of the major things that I'm going to do during the course of the day. And as the day progresses, if I find even 5 minutes between two major activities, I immediately take out my Quran, or I immediately take out my tasbih, and I engage in some form of ibadah or the other. I've personally seen Mufti Taqi Sahib Damat Barakatuh, his son, when he goes to the Haramain, you know, when you come out of the doors of the Haram, from the door to the hotel, it takes you some while to walk, no matter how close the hotel is, because that area is quite broad. As soon as he puts his shoes on, he takes out the Quran, and he's reading the Quran while walking from the door of the Haram to the door of the hotel. And when you value time like this, then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala grants you barakah in your time. Then after a few years, you will look back and you'll say, wow, how did I manage to achieve so much in such a short span of time, in such a little space of time? That's when you value the opportunity that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has given you. I'll conclude with this incident. One day the great Sahabi Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhuma was traveling. And at that time he was quite old. And when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away, he was a young boy. So he was now very revered, because people said this is one of the last remaining Sahaba. And they used to flock and he used to move with a big entourage because people wanted to learn from him. And as he was traveling with all of his students, he suddenly came to a halt next to a grave. And he got off his horse and he performed 2 rakats of salah. So the students remarked amongst themselves that maybe the person who is buried here, Abdullah bin Umar, must be knowing him or must be related to him, or something or the other. Why did he just stop suddenly and perform 2 rakats of salah? So when he completed his 2 rakats of salah, they asked him, Ya Ibn Umar, why have you performed 2 rakats of salah here? He said, you know, as we were traveling and I saw this grave appear in front of me, Allah Ta'ala put the thought in my mind that no matter how much the occupant of this grave wants to perform 2 rakats of salah, they no longer have that opportunity. And I thought to myself, oh Abdullah, you are alive now, you're breathing now, but who knows a few seconds from now whether you will still be alive or you will still be breathing. So immediately I got off my conveyance and I said, whilst I have the opportunity, let me perform 2 rakats of salah. And that's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, perform every salah as if it is your last salah. This ability and strength which Allah has given us, and this opportunity which Allah has given us, are two great bounties of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Unfortunately, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has said, the majority of people are in deception. They think it will continue indefinitely. They think that it won't be snatched from them, it will be snatched from everyone else. And then when it takes them by surprise, it's too late. Hence Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, in this regard, be from the minority, be from those who appreciate the ability and the strength which Allah has given them, and they appreciate the time and the opportunity which Allah has given them. May Allah make us from amongst those fortunate ones. Wa akhiru da'wana.